My name is Aaron Polsky. I'm born and raised in Montreal. I've had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit for as long as I can remember. I think that a lot of people who self-describe as entrepreneurs would feel similarly. I think you know early on if you're cut out for the corporate lifestyle, or if you're somebody that maybe values a little bit more the hustle and a little bit more what you get out of it personally, giving back, being part of a community of nomads and individuals rather than sort of conforming to a bigger machine. I grew up in a very middle-class home on the south shore of Montreal. My father was a truck driver and my mother was an IT specialist for a very large chemicals company. When I got to be 7 or 8 years old, my family decided to move from the south shore into the city because they thought that it would offer better opportunities as far as education go. And so we moved to a pretty affluent neighborhood that my parents really stretched themselves to move to and for us to be a part of. And I think that that is when I really realized where my place was in the sort of economics of our society as a whole. You know, my father wasn't around 5, sometimes 6 days a week, and my mother was working very hard in a corporate environment. We didn't have the sort of perks that a lot of the other kids growing up in the neighborhood had. I realized at a very early age that if I wanted to sort of keep up with the Joneses, if I wanted to look over the fence and still be under this false impression that the grass is always greener on the other side, then I was going to have to make that happen myself, because I didn't feel like my family owed me luxuries. Your parents owe you a safe environment, clothes on your back, food in your mouth, and an environment in which you can thrive. They don't owe you the cool new jeans and the best new toys and the Nintendo whatever is cool right now. They don't owe you that. So if you want to make that happen, you either kick and scream and jump up and down until they give in, or you do what you got to do yourself. I can remember as early as 9 or 10 years old, kids would go to the park and me and a couple of buddies from the neighborhood that were in similar sort of socioeconomic situations would put together stands where we would sell baked goods or lemonade, or we would make garage sales where we would sell our old hockey cards, and that eventually progresses until you're about 12 or 13 years old and you start expanding the horizons of where you're willing to visit on public transportation. All of a sudden you find yourself at Park Metro Station in a small Caribbean grocery store that sells fireworks, and all of a sudden all the 12 and 13-year-old boys in your neighborhood are interested in silly things like fireworks, so you start buying and selling fireworks and traveling halfway across town. It's always just finding that way to make a buck. I can't say for anybody else, but perhaps for me, the chase is initially the money when you're young. And then as you get a little bit older, the chase becomes the hustle, because it's not so much about the end game as it is the process. You're always chasing that process. You're always chasing that sort of motivation. Ultimately, I think where you want to get to as an entrepreneur is where you put yourself in the position that the chase is your passion. And I know that it's pretty cliche where a lot of people say find something that you love and then find somebody to pay you to do what you love. But I genuinely think that's true. It was a big moment for me when I realized that the money wasn't everything, and then I realized that the hustle wasn't everything, and now I'm just genuinely in a pretty good place. I realized at a very young age that food made me happy. My father was still driving a truck. My mother was still working IT. And she got sick when I was young. I think that a lot of people can relate to that. A lot of people have somebody in their immediate family, or at least in their close family, that has had to battle with cancer. People react to it in different ways. Some people feel bad for themselves and ask why. Some people get angry at it and demand answers. Still, I think that a lot of other people just fight as hard as they can because they have motivation in the form of friends and family and support system that they think is worth fighting for. And my mother fought with everything that she had. She came through it. As a young man, I asked myself what I could do around the house to make her life easier. And so for my younger brother, it was, helping out around the house, visiting my grandmother in the retirement home where she was, because my mother needed that in the form of support. And for me, it was helping out with the cooking. I took an interest in it. Very rapidly, it didn't really feel like work. It felt like something I really enjoyed doing. It was back when Food Network wasn't all about 8 million calorie sandwiches and who could make the best cupcakes in under 30 minutes. It was genuinely educational television. And I loved it. I thought that it was great. I found a program at LaSalle College that offered me the opportunity to pursue my collegial education and at the same time take all of my electives in the field that I had determined was my passion. And so I did the restaurant management program at LaSalle College. Like a lot of other people, a lot of other students, I should say, learn in their given field. What you learn in school and what goes on in the real life are two very distinct realities. And you think that everything is going to be shiny and new and beautiful, and that you're always going to work with the absolute best products that the world has to offer, and that your equipment is never going to break, and you're never going to empty a grease trap, and you're never going to mop the floors till 2 hours past the time that the rest of the people in the kitchen are having beers because you're the low man on the totem pole. But all of this is part of paying dues. I think there's a very poor, very poor outlook on things to think that you're too good to do any job. You're never too good to do any job. Being an entrepreneur does not afford you the ability to say, that's not my job, or I'm too good to do that job, or I've progressed beyond that job. It takes all sorts of people to make a ship run in the right direction. And the moment that you lose touch with that is the moment that you lose touch with why it is you started to pursue your given entrepreneurial endeavor. And then eventually you realize that you can't do it all on your own. That school isn't going to teach you everything that you need to know. And that you have to dive in. And I got my first job in a kitchen when I was 14 years old as a dishwasher at a catering company. And I washed dishes like it was the most important thing that needed to be done. Because if you don't do what you do with purpose, then why do it? And that's when I also learned how valuable time was. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, going back to that again, failed to calculate the value of their time. Your time is one of your most valuable resources. You can always buy more goods. You can never buy your time back. That being said, wasted time is also a lesson. You could succeed all you want, but until you failed, you don't really know how to get back on the horse, how to regain your faculties, and how to continue persisting in the same direction. And so I worked in the kitchen about 6.5 years, and I made some decisions that in hindsight were not the best decisions to make at the time. I left very progressive, very creative kitchen at one point in my career because I was offered a position that I wasn't ready for in a larger restaurant. And I was lured in with the promise of a bigger paycheck and more responsibility. And I went from working as a garde-manger in a renowned kitchen that is open till this day in Montreal, where I was learning so much. There was so much to learn there. You know, I went from a place where we were turning tables twice a night and there were 25 seats in the restaurant, and on a great night we did 60 covers, going to a place where on a Tuesday night we'd do 250 covers. So I learned how to manage that kind of volume. I learned how to call out orders. I learned how to read a ticket. I learned how to delegate responsibility. In hindsight, it was a mistake to go there because I had so much to learn in my previous position. Nonetheless, a valuable mistake because I learned a lot of skills that I otherwise may not have accrued for many, many more years. About a year into that job, my grandfather passed away, and my grandmother relied on his business. So eventually my father called me one day, and he said, "Aaron," he goes, "your grandmother needs us." He said, "I'll quit driving the truck if you quit working in the kitchen, temporarily. And we'll go and we'll run your grandfather's business just until she can sell it. And then we can go back to doing what we love doing." Because I loved working in a kitchen, and my father loved driving a truck. Now, neither of these are particularly lucrative businesses. Neither of us were ever going to get rich doing it. But we had found what we loved, and that was what was important. And that's why I say it's, you know, for a lot of people it's the money, and for other people it's the hustle, and then hopefully you get to the point where it's the passion. And so we both quit our jobs with the intent that we would both go back to doing what we loved. And it didn't take us very long to sort of get used to working the 9 to 5 sort of world. Coming into an office in the morning and running this business and drawing the sort of gratification of continuing your father or your grandfather's life's work. One of the biggest assets you can have as an entrepreneur is not to look for a product to sell, because anybody can sell a product. But if you find a solution to somebody's problem, that is a lot more valuable than a product. And if you sell people solutions, you sell people something of value, something of real value, perhaps not tangible value in that it's not an item that they can hold, but you become somebody that they can rely on. And being somebody that people can rely on is a very uncommon quality. There's nothing in this world that's free. Nothing. And if you really believe in the entrepreneurial spirit and you believe in that mindset, then you're doing a disservice to yourself and you're doing a disservice to your friends not to support their endeavors. When your friend opens a business, you don't get to say, "Oh, I can get a deal, so I'm going to go there." You say, "I'm going to support my friend because they took a risk and they made an investment in something that mattered to them, and I'm going to go and I'm going to support them." This whole idea that you're always looking for a handout, there's nothing free in life. And if you get something for free, question it. Ask yourself why. We're all willing to go out and buy the coolest new shoes, or a new hat, or a new this, or a new that from a stranger that we've never met before, because something tells us that this is the trend. But how many times do you go and buy your friend's music on iTunes? Or actually go out to an open mic night that your friend is performing at? Maybe you don't even have to buy it. Maybe all you have to do is show up. That means a lot. And there's value there. And the less we support complete strangers and support those closer to our sort of sphere, a rising tide lifts all boats. learning this new business, this new industry at my grandfather's old business was a hustle. So I was chasing the hustle and I was chasing the money, but I wasn't chasing my passion. So I said, I have to find somebody that wants to open up a restaurant or a bar or a cafe, something. And so I aligned myself with a partner that I can't say enough good things about, a gentleman by the name of Anthony Benda, and my other partner, Elaine Miller. And we found a great little location on Notre Dame West that we were able to get permitted as a bar, which is another interesting story because there was a bylaw that was put into place in the Southwest where they were limiting restaurant permits. You could not operate a restaurant within 25 meters of an existing restaurant. That's just a challenge. It's a hurdle to overcome. If you found a great location and there's some sort of red tape or bureaucracy in your way, there's always a way around it. You just got to look hard enough. And so what we ended up doing was getting it permitted as a bar. We all brought our skill set. Elaine had a lot of experience where service and bar was concerned, and Anthony had a lot of experience running successful coffee shops with a really strong emphasis on quality. And I brought the food to the table. And so the three of us all brought a little bit of something, and we came together and we opened Cordova. And it's a coffee shop, come bar, come restaurant. And we've had our fair share of hurdles and obstacles to overcome, but nothing that anybody else in the restaurant industry hadn't seen dozens of times before us. And it came to fruition. And so now I'm not only running my family business, Thermoflex, but I'm also running Cordova, so my days are a lot longer. They start a lot earlier and they end a lot later. But it's important to align yourself with great partners and knowing what your personal limitations are and leveraging people's skill sets in a responsible fashion. Because this whole idea of investing in something as a silent investor and thinking that you're never going to do anything is for the birds. Nobody will take care of yours like you will take care of yours.